Hey everyone, and welcome to our first episode of the new year. Yes, it's 2025. And with bowl season out of the way, we turn our focus to the college football playoff semi-finals, which are coming to us this week. But first, we are the chaps, and I'm joined by both of my esteemed colleagues who are the finest college football minds east of the Mississippi. It's Ollie and Alex. Happy New Year to you both. How are you?
Happy New Year, sir. What an honour as an introduction. The finest college football minds this side of the Mississippi.
Start as
Beautiful.
we mean to go on, I think. Is the
Absolutely beautiful. I'm going to be pedantic to start the show because why not? Bowl season technically is still upon us because see George absolutely rolling his eyes. Good job with the YouTube now because everyone can see George rolling his eyes at me. The Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl are part of bowl season, George.
very
Our
true.
college football playoff semi-finals.
Starting the new calendar off with a correction in the first minute of recording. Alex, how are you? Oh, lovely, happy new haircut, Alex Chinnery. Mullet
Merry
man
New
is
Year.
back.
Merry New Year, George. Merry New Year, everyone. Um, yeah, I'm all right. I'm feeling good with my team as the underdogs this week. You know, everyone out there saying that it's Ohio State's national championship to lose. Love that talk. Love that talk. Only one team is going to be disappointed on Friday, and I'm looking forward to the outcome of that. I'm looking forward to talking some playoff college football. We very rarely get to do multiple playoff episodes, so it's good that we have the opportunity to sit and talk about three more games rather than at this time of year usually talking only about one more game of college football. So yes, very pleased, very
Indeed.
very pleased.
The way that Alex just portrays those dulcet tones when he talks about college football. But before we get to the playoff games, let's quickly talk because one championship has been decided, and that was the FCS Championship game. And it's easy to say, well, North Dakota State won it again because they are the perennial winners of that championship. But as I'm sure Ollie's going to recant to us, Montana State are getting mighty close to them. And in the end, we're quite unlucky to lose that game, despite the fact that the Bison kind of ran away with it at halftime, Ollie.
Yeah, it was. Firstly, I mean, we've talked about in the introduction, like the FBS college football playoff, and normally we'd be having this podcast, we'd be talking about the national champion because the FCS championship game took place on the Monday night of the FBS when the FBS normally would take place. And great to see it not in competition with the NFL this year. For the last 2 years, it's been held on a Sunday. A lot of people have been really angsty about that, and rightfully so because it's it should have a place in the college football calendar where everyone can sit down and just enjoy it. So it was great that it was a standalone game this year. And Montana State previously after Oregon's lost to Ohio State, the only remaining undefeated D1 college football program, and great quarterback in Tommy Mellott, great running game, really bowled teams over this year. But like you said, George, North Dakota State's got out to massive first half lead. I don't think anyone kind of at half time envisaged the game going down the way that it did, but just um, real heart battle in that second half from Montana State and Tommy Mellott showing why he was the Walter Payton FCS Player of the Year. Cam Miller maybe in the first half showing why he should have been. Yeah, great game, great advertisement for FCS football. North Dakota State continues to be a powerhouse, back at the championship winning level after South Dakota State had won it the last couple of years. And they've got some guys who are going to be a lot of people who now pivot their attention to the NFL draft are going to be hearing about in this process. So yeah, great advertisement for FCS football, and a lot of people thinking maybe college football playoff as we tamper around with how many teams there should be. Maybe they should follow the FCS model of the playoff, which has been significantly different and has produced awesome playoff spectacles for the past few years.
Yeah, no,
Look, I,
try.
I I know Ollie's set you up there with a really good segue, but I'm going to jump in and ruin it. I didn't watch the
God
game.
damn you.
I didn't watch the game. I can barely keep up with FBS football rather than including FCS football. But I have some strong opinions on things. Obviously, it's me. For those not watching on YouTube, I am sporting a mullet, so I feel like I'm qualified to talk about this part of America. Um, Number one, we need to rename the FCS Championship game to the Militia Bowl, because it's always contested by states in which half the population is part of some anti-government militia. Um, and two, to the people saying that North Dakota State need to step up to FBS, fuck off. No, they don't. They are the most FCS football program I've ever seen in my life. Stay FCS, right? You could step up and just lose all kind of relevancy. Right at the minute, people talk about you for one night a year, which is the FCS Championship game. If you step up, people might talk about you for 6 months, and then obscurity. Right? If they step up, where they're going to go? Mountain West. There's some California schools there. There's some schools that don't really scream North Dakota State to me. Right? I think stay FCS, keep winning national championships, build this incredible resume, become something that ESPN decides to do a 30 for 30 on in 30 years' time.
I'm now very unsure whether there's a bunch of people in Fargo screaming at the screen, either in complete agreement, although I'm not sure about that, or they're now chucking things at the screen. Certainly, it will have divided opinion in Fargo, which at this moment in time will be very, very cold indeed. So the
Almost as cold as it is here.
oh,
Almost as cold as it is here.
you're in the tropical south, Alex. It can't possibly be that cold in the tropical south unless you've not turned your heating on, which is more than likely. Right, listen, we're going to pull this back round because Ollie did give me a nice segue. He teed it up just perfectly, and then Alex just threw it all to shit. Now I have to press the expletive button on the on the uploader. So thank you for that. Right, so we are going to talk about if we've got any time left, we're going to talk about the semi-finals. But before we did, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that I think Ollie said this at the top. We're now back to four teams, which is what we're more used to, right? Through the previous playoff system. And I just wondered, has the 12 team playoff got us to the point where we do indeed have the four best college football teams in the land? Or is that irrelevant now that we've entered into tournament play, right? And we on this side of the Atlantic are well used to, tournament play in the way that it works out. And it's a very different beast. So I just wondered if you had any kind of thoughts on what the four teams, and I'm not trying to start any controversy or stir things up or anything like that. I'm generally not, but I do wonder, how do you think it's worked?
Well, I think we all know that Kirby Smart thinks that at least half of the teams that had a bye into the quarterfinal stage of the college football playoff didn't deserve to be there. So I would argue that he probably doesn't feel like we've got the four best teams. Look, I think what the great thing about this college football playoff and the four teams that we've got left is the question here is that I don't really think anyone knows who was the best college football team in 2024, and I think that is absolutely
Yeah.
awesome. I nearly swore there. I nearly gave you an excuse to have another expletive in it.
Doesn't matter. We've got one. You can
Got
now
one, so
swear
I want
swear
now.
as much as you want, to be
Say as
perfectly
much as I
honest.
want. We'll get no more guests from ESPN back. I think this is the thing, right? So I don't think anyone knows who the best team in college football was this year. I think that's awesome, and I think if you look, I had this conversation earlier on today with someone. I think if you look at the four teams that are on the table or on the field, wherever you want to say these next 2 days, I think you can make a great case that any of them can win the college football national championship. And again, I think that's great. I think it's a great advertisement for the sport. And I think you could pick parts of each team and argue that it makes them one of the best teams in college football. But as to say these four teams are the best, I don't know, but I don't think it matters. I think we've had it, despite the results, despite the pontificating and mudslinging and name calling and hoo-hahing and media backlash and social media backlash and all this jazz. I think we've had a great college football playoff, and I think that's all that matters, right? We wanted a great spectacle at the end of the season. You want a great postseason tournament, and that's what we've got. And if results fall their way, Oregon can call themselves a national champion because of the Coley matrix or one of those matrices they used to decide 47 different national unclaimed champions or claimed champions. UCF claims themselves as a 2000 and whatever champion. Go ahead and do it by various metrics, but we've got a great college football playoff. And the NCAA doesn't actually recognise anyone but North Dakota State as the D1 college football champion. So, yeah.
So
are they the best team in the country?
Hey, who knows? Until we have an FCS versus FBS Champion Bowl.
Well, I think that's what they should be. And they should hold it in. They should hold it in the centre of European college football, London.
Absolutely. I think on this playoff, right? You know what's missing from last year? It's so refreshing that it's not here. Is that whining from the team that was ranked fifth?
We got it from the teams that were ranked like 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Yeah, but if you're ranked
13th,
teams, if you're ranked 13th and you lose to Michigan in your bowl game, I don't know if they were ranked 13th or not. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you're out of the college football playoff and then you lose to Michigan in your bowl game, don't have a chance to moan. Go away. If you lost in the first round or the second round of this playoff, you don't get a chance to moan because you had your chance to win it. So go away. Right? 4 teams here. Only Penn State have a sniff of fraud about them because they haven't got a big win so far this year.
Sniff, they're complete frauds. We're not even got onto that point yet, and I'm starting to steam's coming. They're completely fraudulent in this respect.
Sniff of fraudulence about them. I'd also argue, and I might get some hate in Austin for this, Texas have a sniff of fraud about them. Because they lost to Georgia twice. But I think there are the four of, if not the 4 most interesting teams in college football this year in this 2 games in these semi-finals. I think this new playoff plus the transfer portal breaking the dominance of the SEC and really just Georgia, Alabama, and LSU has been fantastic for college football. I think it's so much better when everyone's a 2-loss team. I think it creates intriguing and interesting matches rather than one team steamrolling everyone and you know they're going to be in the national championship game and probably going to win it. I think that this has been the best college football season for some time because you don't know who's going to win on a weekly basis. And I'm not just talking about the mediocre teams in the middle of their major conferences. I mean, the teams right at the top of the major conferences, you don't know if they're going to win or lose every week, right? There's 2 teams here, probably the 2 teams that are going to play in the national championship game. One lost to NIU early in the year and one lost to its rival who was historically bad for most of this year, although they did beat Alabama in a bowl game. But like it's interesting for the first time, and I think it's interesting for outsiders for the first time because you don't have to be a nerd who knows everything about the 3rd string quarterback on the top teams to understand who's going to win the national championship every year. The fact is you don't know who's going to win the national championship every year anymore, and that's amazing. It makes it so much more watchable. It makes it so much more fun to follow as a fan. Like, it's good when we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, how did Alabama get on in the bowl game? I'm not sure Alex mentioned it at all in that
Got-
monumental soliloquy.
he's got his bingo card and he's crossed it off 3 times now, which but what this is why you are the finest college football minds east of the Mississippi, right? Because you pick up on two fantastic points. First one being, Alex, you're right. This has been the best college football season we probably have seen in our watching time, and therefore, probably certainly in recent times, probably the best college football season that we've had. Post-war, right? Big statement to make, but I find it hard to believe how it wouldn't be. And the second point, Ollie, you made about uh, we didn't know who the best team in the SEC was. Well, that's been entirely right from the get-go, and a lot of that has been down to Alex said already about a one-loss team became a two-loss team, became a three-loss team, right? It was in previous seasons with a one loss, that was it, you're out, right? It was almost like one and you're done. And I thought the mentality changed this season in a lot of teams, and they had to get to that point where they were just trying to get to into that top 12. But I know there's been a lot of criticism about the SEC and a lot of it wholly justified, to be honest. But we don't know that we've got the best team in the Big Ten as champion either, right? Because we look at the way that those dice have tumbled. Michigan beat Ohio State, Oregon beat Ohio State beat Oregon, Penn State beat nobody. Do you know what I mean? It's like the whole way through. It's been really difficult, and then you just have to go to the other conferences, and Arizona State, for heaven's sake, who probably could easily have, if they'd won their game, could easily turn out to have been the best team in college football. And if he doesn't win the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year award, then we might as well just tear it up and walk away, because Kenny Dillingham, as we said in this podcast before, has done the most incredible job. That's my soliloquy over. Right. We're never going to keep this to under the 30 minutes, but we will try our hardest. Just very quickly, I picked up on some social media chatter today that viewing figures for the bowl games in totality are up on prior years, which suggests two things. One, it backs Alex's claim that this is the best college football season in the longest time, but also that the college football playoff has kind of resurrected some interest in football post the conference championship games. Would you agree with that statement?
I was waiting
Okay.
for Alex.
Okay.
Alex looked like he was going to say something. I was just going to sit here majestically quiet and let Alex swoop in.
I'm not editing that out. I'm just going to leave that long pause for dramatic effect.
See, I don't think the games are any better. I just think that the sport is there's more people interested at this time of year because 12 teams rather than four have fans that are interested. So more of those guys are going to watch, and say guys, I mean everyone, not just men, obviously. More of those people are going to watch the bowl games, even with their teams not in them, because they've got something to prepare for. They've got a reason to watch those games, right? So you've got something coming up. Your team's still involved. You're invested. You're not turned off, turned away, like so many people have been.
Yeah, I think there's an element of a point that I was going to make that comes under that is you've got to consider that four of the New Year's Six bowl games, which would ordinarily have been just just bowl games, not just bowl games because they are obviously the New Year's Six games were marquee games, but four of those bowl games this year were college football playoff quarterfinal games. So the viewing figures for those would have been, I imagine, I don't know the nitty gritty and the specifics of each bowl game, but you've got to imagine that viewing figures for those New Year's Six games, the four that made up the quarterfinal, will have been higher. But I think that there was a lot of storylines, I think, still kicking around in bowl season, and some of that was helped by NIL. So you look at Colorado, and in a year where like two of their best players are going to be top draft picks, ordinarily you would not have seen a team like Colorado field two players like Travis Hunter and Shadir Sanders. Like, people wanted to watch the Alamo Bowl because it was a good story of BYU this year with Jake Retzlaff at quarterback and how they went about kind of overcoming some of their preseason expectations against a Colorado team that was coached by Deion Sanders, that featured Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, a whole host of other talent, but ordinarily wouldn't have played in that game. There was an intriguing underlying storyline with that, with the insurance that Colorado had got specifically for them to play in that bowl game, and there was multiple bowl games that had NIL specific opportunities for players that didn't opt out of the game, and I think it helped. There was certainly a lot of players who did opt out of games. There's certainly a lot of players who were in the transfer portal who didn't play in game, but it felt like this year there was a lot less like proper, what I would call proper opt-outs, where people just went, no, I'm not playing in the bowl game. Look at Ole Miss, for example, like the leadership example of Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart early on in the process went, I'm playing in the bowl game. I want to play for Ole Miss in a bowl game. And a lot of that team followed suit. And I think that really helped the bowl season this year. There was some great matchups, some great teams, and still some great players kicking around to play in those games. And, you know, when you've had a super exciting college football season as well, that builds momentum for next year. And like we talked about, I think, with 2018 LSU in that bowl game, that 2019 Fiesta Bowl, where they, like, that Joe Burrow really set the scene for that 2019 LSU team in the bowl game the year before. And people want to see that, like a Rocco Becht in the Iowa State Cyclones. People want to see how they build that momentum going into 2025. And I think it's just, there's a lot of things going on that made bowl season just seem that little bit extra special this year. And at the end of the day, it's how often do you get, like, from our side of the pond, a Monday game that kicks off at 4 p.m. Like, the opportunity to just, like, people in this country coming back from work, put on a bowl game. Like, I think it's there's a lot of things that play into it. But I think it's been a great bowl season.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that it was postseason games, if that makes any sense, and it kind of dovetails back into the point you made about the college football playoff being expanded. And yeah, and I think other teams like Ole Miss is a good example, had a point to prove, or wanted to prove the point that, because they were the 13th seed, that felt like they should have been into the college football playoff. So I think there was a collective, right, we're going to show them. Sadly, Alabama didn't follow suit in that mindset.
I don't think as well I don't think there was any, like, teams like, you remember Florida last year where their players clearly just didn't give a toss. They were like, they just weren't. I don't think there was any performances like that where they were just just down bad, Florida last year.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I think the season was continuing as opposed to the season has ended. We've got to play this last game, and then we're off. It was like the season was continuing. Right, let's quickly get on to the. We've built all the way up to the semi-finals, and we've got like 2 minutes to talk about them. Let's leave what I think is the bigger of the two games to the end. Let's talk about Penn State against the Irish. The Irish are slight favourites in this game. I think they're 2.5-point favourites. It looked very impressive against Georgia. Back to what we said about who was the best team in the SEC, it was very difficult to understand which Georgia team was going to turn up at any one time. But I thought Notre Dame were very impressive, and goes back to the conversation that you and I, Ollie, had with Laura, where both of you were hyping Notre Dame up. The over on this is 45.5 points. I have to say so far that it's been all about the under in most of these games. Do we see... I stand by my comment. I think Penn State are just complete frauds in this process. But do we stand by the fact that Notre Dame are going to win this, or does anyone see a shock coming here?
I think it is a difficult game to call, honestly. I think there was moments in the Penn State Boise State game where Drew Aller looked like the guy that he's always meant to be. and like you felt like he could pick apart any defense. Well, the thing is, Notre Dame defense isn't just any defense. I think there's something, and this is just unfathomable and unimaginable for people who have listened to this podcast since we started 6 years ago. I think there's something special about Notre Dame this year, and the defense. I don't think there's a better defense in the country. I think the way they play offensive football isn't pretty, but it's effective. And I think if Jeremiah Love is healthy, like Penn State have got a great rushing defense, but so did Army. And look what Notre Dame did to Army. I think there's the potential for them to run over any team that they face. And defensively, I don't think Penn State have got it all there to compete against a decent defense. And we've seen it in the big games this year for them. Like Ohio State's defense is really good, and Penn State couldn't fly with it. And Oregon's defense, which was brutally exposed against Ohio State, was good, and Penn State couldn't keep up with Oregon's offense. And I just think the vibe of everything around Notre Dame right now feels like they've got great leaders on the field. They've got a great leader on the sideline in Marcus Freeman. And it feels like this, if it's not this year, and we've talked about this in previous years with teams, it's felt like it's either their year this year or it isn't. I feel like Notre Dame is kind of that program this year.
I'm going to say something that's a win-win right now. If Notre Dame gets double-digit points, they win this game. Right? Now, either this comes out two ways. Either this is a scoring bonanza of a game, which we all get to enjoy, and I look like a bit of an idiot. Or Notre Dame wins 10-3, and I look like a genius. So, thank me later when I look like an idiot and you've all enjoyed a phenomenal game. But I do think that Notre Dame's defense, I agree with you, Ollie. I think they're too good. I think Drew Allar is a really good quarterback, has a lot of potential to be a really good quarterback. I think he is carrying around a giant stone necklace named Franklin. I think Penn State is dogged by bad coaching. I think they have the potential, and if that offense clicks, it could be trouble for Notre Dame. You know, if they can somehow find a way to somewhat contain Riley Leonard, it could be a problem for Notre Dame, right? Everything in the Notre Dame offense has come through Leonard in recent games. It did in that game against Georgia. You know, they had to kick a lot of field goals and they had to get themselves into, obviously, field goal range a lot to score and be successful in that one. But I just think, you know, there's a number of ways this could go wrong for Notre Dame, right? When, yes, they scored 2 touchdowns against Georgia, and yes, you know, one of those was a kick return, 98-yard kick return. Their kicker made 3 field goals from 40-plus yards to win that game. That's a really good performance, and they're a really well-coached team. But when it goes wrong for Notre Dame, it's going to be spectacularly bad. And that's the one hang-up I have with this team and then winning a national championship. I think they're probably the best team left in the playoffs. But I think they have a really low floor, and I kind of wonder if they're going to hit that floor at some point in the next 2 games.
It's how they cope with the event, right? In terms of the actual experience, the magnitude is rising game on game, and I thought they coped really well with the Georgia game. As you say, 2 explosive plays either side of the half were what sealed it. And but the truth of the matter is that Georgia never looked like getting back into the game once they got that lead, which is a sign of how Notre Dame had just taken stranglehold of the game. But for me, Penn State historically typically has a good defense. I just don't think the offense is up to much. So, you know, if they can stop Notre Dame, then we get into the realms of what you were talking about, you know, a 10-3 game. I spent a lot of today with kind of sports TV and radio on in the background, and there's a lot of people saying that they think that this is a year that Notre Dame can win the national championship, which would be certainly would not have been on many bingo cards at the start of this season. But standing in their way are two teams who have, I think, met expectations finally this year: Ohio State and Texas. Ohio State just seem like a team who have picked up form at the right time. And I don't mean that to be disingenuous, but throughout the season, for me, they've not looked like the team they are now. So I just wonder, are Ohio State peaking at the right time, which is back to the tournament play we were talking about earlier on? And can Texas, who have been at times dominant this season, and at other times they look a little bit, open to some sensitivities, sorry. Could Texas beat Ohio State, do we think?
They can certainly go and win that game. I kind of agree with everyone. I don't think they're favourite for this game right now. I don't think there's a more informed team than Ohio State right now in these two games. They've completely dominated two good teams in Tennessee and Oregon. But I don't think that Texas's offense is as one-dimensional as Oregon's is, or was in that game, and I think that Texas's defense is better than Oregon's defense. So I don't think Ohio State's going to be able to dominate the game in the way they have these last two. I also don't think Texas is going to be able to dominate the game the way they have in some of their high-profile losses this year. Right? They come out, they dominate that first half against Arizona State. Everyone thinks they're home and dry, and they relax. And I don't think they're going to be put in a position to do that in this game. I think it's going to be a pound for pound, slug for slug, heavyweight fight of a semi-final. And I think if Texas has to go play for play with Ohio State because neither defense can stop anyone, I think that suits Ohio State. I think they have slightly more high-powered offensive pieces, but if it's a defensive battle, I think Texas is the only team out there. Notre Dame probably close as well. Yeah, those three, I think they're the three with, in terms of talent level, that can actually match Ohio State for talent on that defensive side of the ball. And I think it will be a bit of a slugfest. I think people that are coming in expecting points from this one are going to be a little bit surprised, because I think this is a defensive battle. I think the whole national championship is a bit of a change from recent years, but I think this whole national championship run and these next three games are going to be defensive battles. They're going to be low scoring. They're going to be lots of playmaking in the trenches. It's going to be a case of which offensive lines can hold up against these defensive lines, these monstrous defensive lines that the four teams left have. I think there's going to certainly be a case for whoever can run the ball the best gives themselves a good opportunity, a good chance to win a national championship, because I think you've got three or four pretty good quarterbacks, but there's not that standout, oh, they're going to go and put the team on their back and win in the way we've seen in years past. And the way we saw with Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence and some of these other guys that have been in and won national championships in recent years. So I do think it's almost back to the old school Alabama, early Saban period of our quarterback's all right. He's a bit of a game manager. He'll get us there, but our defense is going to win, so they're not going to let you score more than 10 points. Kind of run to a national championship.
Ollie, the fact that this is on the doorstep of the University of Texas, this game, does that have any bearing on this at all?
I think you'd be foolish to say no, it has no bearing, because there's a certain ticket allocation to the University of Texas. There's a certain allocation of tickets to the University of Ohio State University. Got that all. Too many universities in there. And then the other tickets have got to go somewhere else. and we've seen I guess the one downside of the college football playoff experience is some of the games that are a little bit further from home, some of the games that are a little bit close together have had some ticketing issues. I don't think you're struggling to sell any tickets in the Cotton Bowl with the big good people of Texas on the doorstep. So I think there could be a few Texas fans in there on Friday night, and I think that could make a difference. Could make a difference. What I would say is everything. I mean, everything Alex said was perfectly and eloquently put. I think this is a college football national championship and a pair of semifinals, which is a battle of attrition. And I think if you look at who is the healthiest when it comes to those trench battles that we're expecting, I think that could be the big storyline on Friday. It could even be the big storyline tomorrow night if Abdul Carter doesn't play for Penn State, for example. But certainly when it comes to Texas, Ohio State, if those two offensive tackles either can't start or can't play to the best of their ability for Texas against that Ohio State defensive front that did what it did to Oregon, I think that could be the story. Because Ohio State has had those issues early on. They lost Josh Simmons to injury. They lost Seth McLaughlin to injury. They've had to regroup and rebuild early in the season. That's, I think, why you see them being so successful now. They've got that offensive line cohesion with guys that have had to come up, step up to the big moment late in the year. They've had that growth and maturity time, and Texas are going to have potentially two guys starting at offensive tackle who have got very little experience against a team that has got such a really good, strong defensive front. And that was going to be a fascinating storyline to see. Kind of a last man standing wins kind of theory. It could be that kind of national championship in a couple of weeks' time.
A heavyweight boxing match. So talking about national championship, just very quickly because we're massively overrun again. Ollie, who are the two teams that you're going to see in the national championship on the 20th of January?
Notre Dame and the University of Texas.
We're testing Alex's
I'm going to say this. I was so impressed by what Quinn Ewers did at the end of that game. I don't think Will Howard's got that in it. If it comes to a slugfest, I think Quinn Ewers and Will Howard's been talked trash throughout his career. He talked about it this week about being overlooked and disrespected. I think you saw against Arizona State right there at the very end. Quinn Ewers isn't the greatest quarterback. He isn't the five-star guy everyone thought he was going to be. But when you put him in the biggest of moments, that's when he plays at his best. And I think that could be pivotal on Friday night. So Notre Dame versus the University of Texas for me, sir.
Thanks for those two words, Ollie. I do apologise if your commute to work was 35 minutes and we're now 42 minutes into it.
There's a good chance you live in England. You're waiting for a train replacement.
You're stuck
Hey,
in
if
snow.
if it's snowed overnight, people aren't commuting tomorrow.
Hey, if it snows as badly in Dallas Fort Worth as meant to, you might be still listening to this when the Cotton Bowl kicks off on Saturday night.
Indeed. Alex, who are you expecting to see heart over head, head over heart? Who do you think will be playing on January the 20th?
I'm pretty confident Notre Dame are going to be there. I really don't know in the other game. It's almost too close to call. So I'm going to let my heart rule my head and agree with Ollie and say the University of Texas.
Good.
Yeah, I agree with Ollie. I think Quinn Ewers was unreal at the end of that game. I think that there's a little known fact that's been doing the rounds today that one member of Ohio State's 2021 recruiting class has beaten Michigan in their college career. And that man is Quinn Ewers.
Yes, indeed.
And I think it's the ultimate revenge game. And that's almost a point that's not been made that much this week. But I think it almost works both ways. In that for Ohio State, it's a bit of a revenge game against Quinn Ewers as well. And I think I'm really excited and I'm really gutted that I'm not going to be able to stay up and watch it because we've got a game the next day. And I'm going to wake up on Saturday morning and I'm going to be happy or I'm going to be nervous because of the type of person I am, and I don't need more anxiety over a sports team in my life. I do that for a fucking living. Um, so yeah,
The kickoff times are not helpful to us. That's for sure. But we've got used to that now. I think the one thing that the national championship game really needs to avoid is two teams in the same conference playing. And I know I say that firmly in the view that I know that two SEC teams have played, but I think it's much more attractive if you've got two teams that typically don't play off against each other. So whoever it is, I just
if
don't want it to be Ohio State and Penn State.
if Notre Dame makes it, then it's going to be an intriguing national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
They got to get the job done.
I don't disagree. Right, we're knocking on 45 minutes, so most of our listeners have given up by now, and I've trudged through the snow to get to the office. That's all for us in this episode. It's been awesome talking nonsense around the microphone again. I will keep this outro very short. Thanks again to Alex and Ollie for the brilliant input. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and well, and catch you all next time.